What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about primary weapons. So these would be weapons you would pair with an SMG, so like ARs, LMGs, tactical rifles, those kind of things. And I have my top 13, and then I ranked them all with really specific measurements, as well as some recoil measurements, which would be more of a feel for the gun rather than just a straight statistic, which is obviously super important. Like, statistics are not the only important thing. How the gun also feels to you as a person is also very important. So what I'm going to do is go through all of that, and then I'll actually share the spreadsheet with you, and you can create a copy of it and go do the same recoil tests I did and see which one feels like it has the best recoil to you, and see for you which guns come out on top in my ranking system. This is something that we might actually add to the website eventually, but for now it's just in spreadsheet form. This is kind of a trial run for that, but as always, if you like the content, please drop a sub, like, and a comment. I worked really hard on this video. I've been working all day on it, actually, trying to get this stuff figured out and ranked. Let's jump into it, and we will talk about the different primaries. All right, so how I did this and how you should do it. Basically, I went out into a plunder match, and I tried what I thought were like the top 13 main weapons right now in the game, and I shot an object that was like 60 meters away. I shoot that sign. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know I shoot that sign over by the firehouse in like the northeast part of the map. It's about 60-70 meters away, which is like a very average engagement distance for me with my primary weapon, probably between 40 and 80 meters. I would say, I don't know, 80% of my engagements happen. So that's a good judge for how the recoil is going to feel. What I did was I got 30 rounds, built my favorite meta build for all these different guns, and then I shot at that sign that's 60 meters away, and I just ranked them based on feel for how they felt compared to each other. So I got a base rank for all of them, and then I came in afterwards and I would pair up, like, say for example the XM4 and the FARA. I would put those on the same loadout, spawn back in, and then compare them back to back, rather than, obviously you can't have 13 in your inventory at once and rank them all individually. So you just need to rank them first individually. You're going to get some wrong, that's fine, and then start putting two that are next to each other in the same loadout and compare those, and then move them up and down the chart one at a time as you do that. So that's what I did. I got these numbers for what my favorite guns are in terms of recoil. So for me, the Finn, easily the most accurate gun in the game, literally does not move. Perfectly straight vertical recoil with the meta build. This is without the adverse barrel, so this is the slow shooting one. So obviously it has really bad TTK, so we'll talk about all that. AN94 for me is the second most accurate. The one issue with the AN is that for some reason, once you start going, it starts shooting to the left of the reticle. So if you factor that in, maybe it's not that accurate, but the recoil is like not even there. Super easy to control. Growl always has had low recoil. I use a Nexus barrel, so we'll talk about this build later on. Finn Adverse, I was shocked by. It actually has, for me, very manageable recoil at 60-70 meters. It has very good TTKs at range as well. We're going to talk about all that. Bruin was 5th. Cold War AK, XM4, FARA, QBZ were all kind of in the middle. They're not super easy to control, but they're just good across the board. We'll see that as we go through it. EM2 actually had pretty hard for me to control recoil at that range. C58 as well was hard to control. Stoner was very hard to control. And the MG82 is also very hard to control. So that's how I would recommend you do this. And then when you come to my sheet, just fill these out one by one and rank them yourselves, just like I did. And then you can see the overall ranking for the gun, because the rest of these columns are not something that is feel based. They're all statistics based. So you don't mess with these columns. You'll just mess with the recoil rank column. That is a personal feel for you. It can depend if you're on mouse and key or controller. You just need to do it yourself and fill out my sheet, and then you can come out with a good rank for your weapons. But looking at TTKs, so I did two different things. I have TTK at range and then TTK close. So this is basically like 40 meters plus and 40 meters and shorter. So that's kind of an interesting cutoff, because I think probably close to 50-50 engagements with these primaries happen around there. It's probably closer to like 50 meters, really. But I did factor in some like range drop-offs into these numbers as well. So if there were two guns that had really similar TTKs, but one had 10 meters extra range, then I would give the edge to that gun in terms of the TTK, even though they had the same TTK actually at, 80 meters or whatever. If they had extra range, I would give the advantage to that weapon. So looking at this, the top TTK at range is actually the Finn Adverse. This is using my advanced TTK calculator, by the way, with like 11% headshots, 7% neck shots, 35% chest shots, 35% extremities, and then the rest on stomach. So these are really accurate numbers based on real life shot locations. So Finn Adverse was first, tied with the MG82. Basically, again, I ranked those the same because they are basically The Fin Adverse had slightly worse TTKs just by a little bit, but it had more range by quite a bit. So I was like, well, they're very close. They're both on top in terms of TTK, but the Fin has more range, so I'll give it to the Fin. That was followed by the Stoner and the Bruin, which both have really good TTKs as well. And then middle of the pack again is like the EM2, the C58, XM4, Cold War AK, all have very good TTKs at range, but they're just kind of middle of the pack there. And then the Farah, QBZ, Grau, AN94, and Fin are all slower by a decent amount. As far as bullet velocity, all of these have really good bullet velocity except the Fin Adverse and the Bruin. The Bruin's down at like 950 meters per second, so I gave that number 2. It was the second best behind all these other ones. And then the Fin Adverse is much slower, down at like 780 meters per second. So it's a lot harder to hit your moving shots at range with the Fin because of that. Mobility wise, there's kind of like 3 different big groups here. So number 1, four big groups, I guess. Number 1 is the QBZ. It's a Cold War gun and it has great mobility on top of that. And then the rest of the Cold War guns are all very similar. So I ranked them all the same. And then the Modern Warfare ARs would be after that, followed by the Modern Warfare LMGs. And the MG82 is actually a really good mobility Cold War LMG. For some reason, the Cold War LMGs have slower sprint speeds. So if you look at a video I made a couple days ago, I talked about sprint speeds. And for some reason, the Cold War LMGs have slower sprint speeds than the Modern Warfare LMGs. So that's why I said the Stoner is actually the worst mobility of all of the guns, because it is actually slower than the Modern Warfare LMGs. ADS times, AN94, Grau, Cold War AK, XM4, and QBZ come out on top. I built all the meta builds on my website and compared all the ADS times, and I basically ranked them the same if they were close. So within like 20 milliseconds or so, I ranked them the same. So all 5 of these guns have really good ADS times. The Grau with the Nexus barrel has fantastic ADS times. Cold War AK and QBZ, very, very good ADS times as well. Obviously, the slowest ones are going to be the LMGs. So we've got the Bruin and the Fin Adverse, and then the Stoner and MG82. And the Fin ADS is a little bit faster because you get that tac laser on there with the recommended build for this. I'll go over all the recommended builds at the end of this video so you guys have them. But I just wanted to go over all these stats first. So then looking at TTK up close, when I did this, I included ADS because with SMGs, you don't always need to include ADS because sometimes you're hip firing, sometimes you're firing before you ADS, and as you're ADSing, some of those bullets will hit. So that's why there's a percentage on the website where you can put like 25%, include 25% of the ADS time, because maybe you hit a few bullets as you're ADSing with an SMG. But when you're using an AR, a primary weapon from 30 to 50 meters or 20 to 50 meters, you're always ADSing. So I think it's important to include ADS time and consider that in situations where it's like a 1v1 situation. ADS time at range matters, and the most important thing is staying alive. So you want to, if you both see each other at the same time, you want to be able to kill them faster, including ADS. So that's why I think that's important. In situations where they don't see you first, you shouldn't include ADS because you can just ADS and take your time, which is why at range I don't include it, because at range usually you're behind cover. You can ADS before you peek up behind cover. So I don't really think it should be included at range. Same with open bolt delay. I include open bolt delay up close some of the time, not all the time. That's kind of a point for debate between different people. But at range, I don't include open bolt delay because I feel like it doesn't always matter. You can pull the trigger a little bit sooner as you're peeking up behind cover, and you're fine with open bolt delay. It doesn't really count there. But anyway, TTKs at range. We got the EM2 in first, followed by the Cold War AK, followed by the QBZ, which was surprising to me. I did not realize the QBZ with these weighted shot percentage locations would actually have that, and it's partially because of ADS. It's because ADS is included, so keep that in mind through all these. EM2 comes out on top, followed by Cold War AK, followed by the QBZ, and then surprisingly the Grau actually is in fourth, and again that's because ADS times are included. XM4 was really close, so all of these top 5 were really, really close, like within probably 30 milliseconds of each other. So the top 5 really, you can't really rank them separately. I mean, you can, that's why I did, but it's just so close that it's really not that big of a deal. And then at the end, obviously the LMGs, because we're including ADS time, the LMGs are going to be very slow. So the Bruin is last, Fin is second to last, Stoner is third to last. The MG82 actually, because it has such good TTKs, and because it's Cold War gun and the ADS times are decent on it, it's only like 340 something milliseconds base ADS. It actually comes out kind of middle of the pack, which is one of the reasons why it's so good and so popular, is because it fries people in that first damage range. So that's One of the reasons why it's just really, really popular. C58 came out 7th. Fin Adverse came out 9th, so it was first in long range, but 9th up close. That's because of ADS times and open bolt delay. But then if you go through all of this, basically all I did is I just added these rows up or these columns up, and I know that that's not correct. I'm not trying to say that these are the be-all, end-all numbers of the weapon ranks. It's just I didn't feel like trying to go through and weighting these different columns based on how important I thought they were and things like that. I just added them up because if I did weighting, it would be just me literally making stuff up. I would just be saying, oh, well, this one seems like it's, should only be 20% important instead of 100% important. So that would literally just me be like making stuff up. So I didn't want to do that. I just added the columns up and I got the overall rankings. So you can see number 1, Cold War AK came out on top. That matches my opinion, actually. I still think the Cold War AK is the best gun for primary usage. Followed by the EM2. Again, that matches exactly what I would have expected. The EM2, I think, is right there with the Cold War AK right now. It is a fantastic gun. Then followed by the XM4 and the Grau. Again, that's exactly what I would have expected. These are all fantastic guns right now. The XM4, I think personally, I like a little bit more than the Grau. The Grau is like the easy version of the XM4. It doesn't kill quite as fast, but it has better recoil, so it's easier to control at range and hit your shots with and stuff, and it has better ADS times as well. And then at the end of the pack, we have the Stoner, the Fin, the MG82, the XM or the Farah, and the Bruin. So obviously my weighting's not correct here. The LMGs, something about the LMGs, the way they're weighted here is killing them. It's probably a combination of just having bad mobility, bad ADS, and bad TTKs up close because I'm including ADS time and TTKs. Maybe that's what's doing it. But we know the MG82 is a really good gun right now for a primary, but for some reason it came out kind of middle of the pack in my ranking system here. Again, I didn't do anything trying to rank these like appropriately. I didn't try to scale the columns at all. So overall, I think it's pretty clear that the Cold War AK, XM4, EM2, Grau, surprise here, Fin Adverse. This has really bad bullet velocity, so it makes it kind of hard to use at range, but it has ridiculous TTKs, and we will talk about that some. It's really easy to control, super good TTKs. It's weird because it doesn't have a headshot multiplier, but overall, a very good gun. So I'm going to say those are my top 5, actually, how this came out for the average person to use. We're going to go in the list that they came out here. Cold War AK number 1, followed by the EM2, and then the XM4, and the Grau. And then the Fin Adverse is an honorable mention. All right, I'm not going to go through all these recommended builds. Like I said, I'm going to share this sheet down below. And I do want to mention, when you open this, you're not going to be able to edit it. What you do is you go to File, and then make a copy, and then I'll make a copy to your own Google Sheets page. And then from there, you'll be able to edit your own page. So that way you can do your own recoil rankings and find out what guns come out on top for you. As far as recommended builds, I want to highlight just a few things. The Fin and Fin Adverse, there's 2 barrels. There's a long shot advantage and long shot adverse. Adverse is what makes it the Fin Adverse. It gives it super, super high fire rate and good TTKs. Both the Fin and the Fin Adverse do not have a headshot multiplier, but that's included in all of my TTK stuff because I use the advanced calculator where it factors in some neck shots and some headshots. So everything above is true there. On the base Fin, it shoots slow enough you can get away with a tac laser. You don't need a mag. Let's see, what did I want to talk about? Fin Adverse, I use sleight of hand just to keep the mobility up. Instead of using the 100 round mag or whatever, I feel like sleight of hand just makes it so you don't get slowed down in terms of ADS and mobility, which is nice. The Grau, so there's 2 different Graus on here. I have Grau and Grau Console. Before I mention that, actually, I should have said this first. So I've got the PC FOV for affected settings, the optic that you should use there in this column, and then on console or PC, if you play independent, I think you should use those optics. So I've included both. So you got a big overarching optics column here, one for affected FOV on PC, and then one for console or if you play independent on PC. But back to the Grau, I've got 2 builds here. So if you're on PC or you're on console, this is a good build for both. So VLK, Core Combat Hollow, and then Nexus Barrel. So most people use this Archangel barrel, but the Nexus barrel has very similar damage range, very similar bullet velocity with way, way better ADS times and better mobility. And the recoil is so good on the Grau that I don't think you need that little tiny bit of extra help that the the Archangel gives you. So I think this is a great build here. This is what I would actually recommend if you're going to use an optic. It gives you more zoom than just running it with the iron sights. But if you're on console, it's still a fantastic build to run the old meta build where you use the tack laser instead of an optic, because you have those really good Archangel iron sights. Someone's going to tell me I'm saying that wrong. Maybe it's Archangel. I don't know. But either way, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to mention specifically in this video. All the other things should be pretty self-explanatory in the recommended builds. So like I said, this will be linked below. You can check it out. You can rank your own recoil and see what comes out on top for you. But I hope you guys found this video useful and informative. I spent a lot of time on this, going over the TTKs and getting all the exact numbers and ranking them appropriately. So I hope you appreciate it, but I will see you guys all in the next video, which will be out tomorrow.